Welcome everybody to your former high school, former junior high, or former elementary school, and welcome to everyone else if you didn't happen to attend school here. We're going to be learning a little bit more about the changeover from a school to an artist space with Jerome Nesson. That will be towards the end of our program. I'm going to start off talking a little bit about the history of artists, visual artists in this area. And then the director, Dave Shepard of Acme Theater, which is this space that's part of the whole art space, we'll be talking more about performing arts. Now, like the Allen people, we don't have a lot of information, so this is almost like an introduction to the arts in Maynard. So please, I know it's a little sketchy, no pun intended, so we'll be sort of hopping around a little bit, and please fill in more. You know, we're just trying to get a few things out so that we can really build on our information, because if it isn't recorded, it never becomes part of Maynard history. So that's part of the reason why we decided to do this wonderful collaboration about the arts in this very special corner of the world. Now, one thing that I think would be really exciting to find is an Arthur Fuller Davis painting. He was 1863 to 1953 in Acton, and he would often take his bike and take long walks and paint. And his paintings are really collectible. There's been quite a few that have been located in private collections. I believe it's over 100 right now. It so happened that after he went and studied art in Malden with Albion Picknell, lived in New York City for a while, where he was a member of the American Watercolor Society, he returned to Acton. He lived across the street from the Memorial Library at 491 Main Street in Acton. And he was elected to become the librarian there at the Acton Memorial Library, where he was director for, 43 years. So what do you think? The library has really been able to keep a lot of his paintings. And over the years, pretty recently, they've had a huge retrospective exhibition of his work. And a lot of his things are hanging permanently. He had a lot of sketchbooks. He kept journals. So somewhere there's just got to be some scenes of the Assabet River or the mills or maybe Russell's Bridge. Something has to be there of Maynard. You can't tell me that he didn't get over just a little further down the road on 27 to paint here. He did actually grow up in Roxbury and was born there, but he came out here as a young child. And he painted not only outside the window on Main Street in Acton, but also in his mother's childhood home up in Annisquam. So if you see A. Davis, Arthur Davis, take a note, and that's worth more researching. The current director there, Wanda Null, is a real fan of Arthur Davis's too. Okay, they have an index too to the sketchbooks. All right, let's get back to Maynard. When I was looking for information about this building, I guess in 1915, the vote was taken by the town to purchase the Dr. F.U. Rich lot on Summer Street. That's what this was. It was once called the John Whitman Place, and they wanted a school site and a fine brick building. And it now accommodates, according to Guttridge, who wrote that earlier history of Maynard, our first class high school and several grades at a cost of $61,500. It was occupied beginning in the fall of 1916. And that's from A Brief History of Maynard, Mass. by Guttridge. Going through some of the old books, this happens to be 1876. This is an Acton town directory, and it says, I'm looking for artists that I come across, C.K. Haggett, tonsorial artist, exclamation point, near post office in Concord. Wasn't quite the artist I was looking for. So, but, nice illustrations are here everywhere, and, unfortunately, a lot of it isn't given credit, including a lot of the textiles by women. So that's kind of unfortunate. Also, going through Guttridge's Brief History of Maynard, I found out that the daughter of Thomas H. Brooks, you've heard of Brooks Street, they lived on Summer Street, Mary Jane, she married a Joseph W. Reed of Acton, who was a Harvard graduate and a lawyer. And their son, Brooks Reed, had an art gallery in Boston. So that's another thing worth investigating, because maybe he showed the Hosmer artists, the Hosmer House in Sudbury that a lot of us visited on one of our Maynard Historical Society field trips. There's a lot of painting done there, a lot of connections with Boston, and maybe some other artists that we haven't really been able to find too much yet in Maynard. While we're on galleries, there was also a child's gallery in Stowe. I think it closed in the 1970s. I don't know, does anyone remember Child's Gallery in Stowe? Okay. I'll talk about that probably at another time. There was also the Carboni gift shop on Great Road. Remember that cute little all-enclosed building? Well, Walter Carboni's brother, Guido, who was a class of 34, I believe, he was an artist. And I suspect maybe that's where some of his artwork was shown in the gift shop. Walter Carboni, for those who don't know, was the head of the Conservation Commission in Maynard for many, many years. Another artist around the same time, probably about class of 34, was Arnie Salo, Finnish-American artist who really gained a lot of reputation as both a fine artist and a graphic artist. He has had exhibitions at Finlandia Foundation in Boston, beautiful landscapes, a real love of nature and wood, which is often characteristic of the Finnish artists anyways. He had one painting I recall vividly of a wooden rowboat up against the shore and water in the background. It was just very lovely. He worked in watercolors and oils too, I believe. He passed away about 2 years ago, unfortunately. Now, is Ralph Chase here today? I guess his dad did some cartooning. He took some classes. That would be back then. Another person who's been very interesting, which I still haven't gotten a really good grip on, was a person affiliated with the old blacksmith shop that was in the Maynard Fine Arts Theater. He was a filmmaker, he was an artist, they had a blacksmith shop in there in galleries, so we need to gather more about that. I'm not sure if that was Arthur Coughlin or Frank Sanderson? Roy, do you recall?
I think he was a Coughlin.
Coughlin? Okay, well, both Coughlin and Sanderson were very active in 1921 when Maynard celebrated its 50th anniversary, Maynard being a very, very young town. And they got together all kinds of plays, and they did decorations. They hired this company out of Boston called New England Decorating Company, and they would put up those red, white, and blue frills, flags, bunting, pennants. Actually, it was blue and yellow because that was the time in which Maynard voted for the town colors, blue and yellow. And the anniversary day was on April 19th, 1921, but it continued, a few days before and after because they had cold rain and snow. And back then, the cost of decorating the whole town was $350. But anyways, back to Bert Coughlin. He organized the first high school team football squad. He had a dance orchestra. He, along with probably Samuel Lira and the Gruber brothers, got moving pictures going at the Riverside Hall. So they were really creative in many different ways. During the celebration, many old pictures and relics were exhibited. Sound familiar? They liked to look at old things even back then. Governor Channing H. Cox was in office. He attended the ceremony, along with the Honorable John F. Fitzgerald, who was courting a lady just up the street in Acton, later to become his wife, and they were grandfather to John F. Kennedy, our former president. He frequently came to Maynard. He was very familiar with the dances and entertainments. He even got up with the Honorable John F. Fitzgerald and sang Sweet Adeline at this ceremony commemorating the 50th anniversary of Maynard becoming an official town. George D. Elson photographed the town officials at the Roosevelt School during this anniversary celebration. Okay, on Parker Street, I once visited John Korsman's grandfather. Now, this isn't the father who became the airline pilot. His John Korsman, who graduated in 1975, but he left Roosevelt School in about grade 2. We sat next to each other, and he recently came back in his adult life to this area of the world, and his Finnish grandfather on that side, too, did wonderful wooden inlaid work. This is a pencil holder, and he had all kinds of little shapes with inlaid wood. Just please pass that around and see how amazing that was. He was just working in this tiny little basement. I think he worked in the mill other than that. And a lot of that would go on the Finns being good at the woodwork. We're jumping ahead a little bit. In the 60s, still a lot of the women weren't maybe working full-time, and after they had the kids in school, they might want to do something like take a night class in painting. Dennis Logston was a painting teacher here in Maynard. He had classes, probably about 15 or 20 students. I think Florence Backrath, Vera Coleman, Mrs. Picard, wife of the soon-to-be CEO of Raytheon, I believe. They all took those painting classes. Dennis lived in Maynard, let's see, mid-1960s to 1975. He's a member of the Society of Animal Artists. He's still painting. He has tried to get one of his animal pictures on the duck stamp. You know, there's a contest. It's a national contest to try and get a piece, one of the ducks, a waterfowl picture on a stamp. He hasn't been successful yet, but his work, highly detailed scratch board and watercolors of animals, and also character studies. He lives in Marlborough now. Let's see, when I was at Fowler Junior High here, Carol LaBelle was the art teacher. I don't know if anyone remembers her. Jerry DeRico was a graphic artist who had his own graphic studio on 3rd Street, 1st Street, 3rd Street. And he entered this contest that they had for the centennial. 1975 was the centennial celebration of the town of Maynard. And we wanted to have a new town seal. So, I'm still in high school, and I, worked on, okay, should I do the front of the town building, that it's 60s, 70s style, or town clock. Seemed like everybody would do the town clock. And then I forget what I actually submitted, but, I didn't win, but the professional graphic artist Jerry DeRico did. And I thought, well, gee, he's a professional, but anyways, not to be daunted, I had it rubbed in my face a little bit later when I later worked for him. I was able, as a high school student, to work in his art studio doing graphic arts, and I know the town seal would often have to be used for the sides of trucks or for this or that, and so sometimes I had to, add little circles or something, so he thought it was great to be able to add to the town seal. Although I think I did get a Maynard commemorative coin for maybe runner-up prize, I forget. Beverly Jean Smith had a long legacy of teaching art at Maynard High School. She was very suave and educated, elegant. She had done modeling and had definitely been to many other places other than Maynard. And she had to kind of contend with a lot of the rockers who all they wanted to do in art class was to make another t-shirt with a Black Sabbath logo, Aerosmith, what more Aerosmith silkscreen can I put up with? But, she would encourage certain people who had talent, like Anthony Tarasi. He became a hairdresser. I think he graduated about 1971 or so. And another person was Jamie Arama, who went to Mass College of Art, as did I, and later became a graphic artist. But he also did the same sketches of still life that a lot of us did. It was an old lantern, an old boot. We had the same items, so a lot of the artwork from that kept coming up. Ironically enough, too, Jamie and I both have English and Finnish heritage. We went to the same college together. He was a year ahead. We ended up working at the Beacon to get, as graphic artists doing pay stuff. We ended up being in the first crew of the Tab. It was the Newton Tab and the Brookline Tab way back when it first began. Dick Yusufian had worked at the Beacon, decided he was going to start his own newspaper. went to Watertown, was where it was based at first, and started the TAG, which is, you know, now huge and flourished since Sudbury and Framingham. It's everywhere. But that was Jamie and I, ironically enough. We had a mentor at the Beacon, though, going back, Pat McMillan. She encouraged us whenever we could do an illustration. She would say, oh, you know, illustrate this. So I have chipmunks and things all, you know, within the old weekly newspaper, the Beacon. Also, in high school, a lot of the students would be the ones that would design the covers of the town report, and inside the school report, yearbook cover designs. Paul Henning was our yearbook advisor, and he is the brother of the newscaster John Henning. One of Beverly Jean Smith's dream was to send someone to the Harvard of Art Schools, Rhode Island School of Design. I was accepted there. It is a lot more expensive than the only state-supported art college in the United States, Massachusetts College of Art, a very special place where there's so many talented people who really worked hard. A lot of them were keeping down jobs while going there. It had a very high population of older students, too, including Margaret Savage, who has a studio over at Emerson Umbrella for the Arts, which we'll hear a little bit more about from Jero when he gets up here. Another interesting person at the Beacon, I don't remember her last name, but she lived on Summer Street just beyond St. George's Church. She had one of those really big houses that overlooks the town, symmetrical. Holly.
Mildred Holly.
Mildred Holly, right, and she lived with her sister. I took a tour of her house. She had her oil paintings everywhere, all over, and she started to go more like Vincent van Gogh with really thick paint. She was quite an artistic person, too, who was another Beacon story. Okay, Paul Keto from Maynard. He went to Mass Art and was director of exhibitions there for a long time. I think he may still be. At the Maynard Library, you probably remember the stereoscopic viewers. You hold up that little viewer and then you have a huge stack of pictures to look at. And they would look 3D. Well, while I was at Mass Art, I attended a couple of slideshows by this talented person who had 3D photographs. Not the old ones, but new ones that he had taken with a special camera that takes a slightly different angle from two different spots. And then your eye mixes those two together, so it has this effect of really coming out to you. Maybe some of you older folks went to a 3D movie. I don't know if they ever show those at Fine Arts Theater, but I know that 3D movies were around maybe in the 50s. I never saw one, but I've seen some wonderful slideshows. And this person happened to live on Kent Street near my older brother, and went to visit his house where he lived with some other artists, and there were all kinds of drapes. Gee, it looked a little like this, lower ceiling, but everything was black, I think. All kinds of props, hats, scarves. And who do you think used to live there and left half their stuff there before Ron Larby moved in there? Ron Larby's sitting here in our audience, but Steve Tyler and some of the members of Aerosmith, right before they became famous. So, you know, Ron had some of their leftover props. And it's wonderful to see that Maynard has another artist and his wife Michelle from years later. They went on to Glendale Street. The old Finnish church got converted into, I imagine, a very artistic space. I haven't seen it yet, but Ron has brought some wonderful slides that you can look yourself in a small viewer as opposed to a big slideshow, which I've seen where you have to wear special glasses. So during our break, when we have some refreshments before we go on the tour, you might want to take a peek at his 3D photos. Now, Bob Brooks, the junior high principal, he was an artist. I remember when he was a teacher here, I don't think that was his subject, but it was well known that he was an artist. Frank Hill, the principal of the Green Meadow School for many years, certainly has dabbled in artistic endeavors. He had a wood-burning kit. He would always take the signs and do a name tag in front of all of the different classrooms. My mother was the school librarian there, so I got her a little hand-carved, wood-burnt sign that he created. I don't know if he's here tonight. let's see, I guess Brian Kelly, junior high art teacher. He was hired here in '82, and I think, I don't know if it was close to this space here. I did an artist in residency. I was an animator that showed the kids how to do clay animation. So we did, of course, a rock video for one of the after-school programs here. And Sharon Santillo, art teacher at the elementary, hired in '87. She's still doing wonderful things there. WAVM was just beginning when I was still at the high school there. And this is one of the t-shirts that Chris Johnson designed. Again, that kind of rock element, Black Sabbath, Aerosmith technique is still prominent. That is in a hand silk screen. This is I did this after college, I guess, but this is silk screened, where you put a design on silk, lay it on the cloth, and then push the dye through. This is done a little bit differently. Okay, Arts Lottery Council. Bill and Deidre Grunwald really got that going. This is the program where the money made off of the megabucks would go out to the towns. You know, they said, hey, the small communities, they know what things to fund. They know who is doing like the artistic creative things. So because of Bill and Deidre, really, they really got it going. Deirdre did many Celtic types of paintings, very ornate, and we're going to be fortunate enough to visit her open studio today, as she now has a studio here. You know, she was up at the Brush with History Gallery up in Lowell, and was always trying to get figure drawing classes going, and it was wonderful that that started. And I was on the council along with Peter Christensen, whose wife was Serena, and she designed exhibits at the Museum of Our National Heritage in Lexington. He didn't really do much artwork, and neither did Bill Grunwald, but they certainly had the support there for all kinds of artistic endeavors. So that needs to be praised also, because you can't really have a community of artists without having supporters. Fran Addison was part of that group. Ilsa Strawuski, who was actually from Bali. And I remember another member of the council, Carolyn Stock, who I see, stained glass artist and painter. She and Ilsa and I went in to see some Balinese performances in Boston, and it was just amazing to know what a whole different attitude towards the arts they have there. Carolyn, did you bring something to show? Good. Afterwards, we're going to have some refreshments, and please do look at Carolyn's beautiful artwork. I don't know if any of you remember seeing a mural at the top of the Green Meadow, the old Green Meadow School in the cafeteria. It was done by Brian Shea a long time ago. It didn't stay long. It was the wrong material. It peeled off. But he did a lot of the mill paintings. I don't know if there's any still in a bank. I think the donut shop off Nason Street might still have one of his. He did a lot of the outdoor scenes. He had a one-person show at Ernest Jeunesse Law Offices off of Powder Mill Road once, where you walk into all these different rooms, and he just did many, many paintings. He was prolific. And I understand now that there's a mural at the children's room at the library by Nancy Bailey. I think that was funded by the Maynard Cultural Council. It's gone through some name changes since the beginning. Also back then, Maureen Nicholas wanted to form another art organization called Maynards, M-A-Y-N, and then capital A-R-T-S. So she got some things going. I guess the space, the group splintered off, and someone said a lot of them came over to ArtSpace eventually. So that means it must have been in existence for a while. I think she bought the old Gately home. Remember Gately's Liquors? Bob Gately was a newscaster at Channel 4 for many years. They eventually moved out. Gately's Liquors was next to Stewart's Florist. Well, that was where the Nicholases lived. We've also had some artist studios at the Calvin Coolidge School, or Bancroft Street School, as the old timers called it. And I guess it was only one floor, because later on they put it on the second floor. It was an elementary school, and I went there one year. Miss Sheridan was the principal, Ralph Sheridan's relative. And she always said Calvin Coolidge School. There was a ceramic artist up there and several others. That's a wonderful space for artists. We had our little headquarters there for the Maynard Cultural Council for a while. Okay, I also heard recently about a new artist on Nason Street, Iris Lee Marcus, faux finish. I don't know if she's here tonight, but probably a lot of you are familiar with Art in the Heart of Maynard, lovely art, cooperative. Lots of artwork is shown there. One of the owners was a docent at the Decorable Museum in Lincoln, which is known for contemporary art. She does ceramics and is still involved with that. You may have seen paintings hanging in the town building where the main meeting room is. Those were commissioned by the Cultural Council, June Alexandrovich, who later did some pen and ink drawings. She wanted to go after some of the buildings that were depicted in the Maynard Historical Society's archives, and that's what she did do. She also did a portrait of Ralph Sheridan, which is now owned by the Maynard Historical Society. Okay, let's see, it must have been about 1987 or so. I was looking for some artist space and checked out Emerson Umbrella. This old school in Concord had gone through horrible damage. Water was pouring through. The theater space had really buckled like this, the floorboards, and eventually it got going. They filmed the first, or one of the first, Antiques Roadshow there, Emerson Umbrella, and Goldie Hawn's film about moving into a house with the Steve Martin. I know they filmed in front of that recently, but maybe Jerome Nelson can tell us a little bit more about that. Laura Howard, is she here? She's the new chair. Hello. She's the new chairperson of the Arts Lottery, so good to have you. I think you're interested in assembling a database. So they're trying to get forms together and try and bring in some of the little pieces of information that we've just touched upon tonight. So sorry if we skipped over a part of the art scene that you had wished for, but I'm sure we can do more later. I don't want to take up too much more time, so why don't we go from the basic visual artist now into performing arts. The theater space here, Dave Shepard is the director. Grew up down the street. I mean, Bolton's almost
it's closer.
Maynard, so we're not going to be too prejudiced. So turn it over to you, Dave, and I'll clear these off because who knows what might happen.
Yes, I am a traitor. I grew up in Bolton. It was not my choice. If I had had the choice, I would have grown up in Maynard. But I did grow up in the Bolton Historical Society. My grandmother was president for many, many years of Bolton Historical Society and wrote both the Bolton Town Histories. So some of you might have known her. She was Esther Whitcomb. So I grew up in Bolton doing theater there for many, many years. I started in the early 60s. I was barely even born at that point in time, but I did theater with the old Couples Club, which during the 60s and 70s, a lot of the couples clubs for the different churches would put on 1 or 2 shows a year to pay for their scholarship programs, which was great, and worked with them for many, many years. In '76, a bunch of us got together and started a group called Bolton Backstage, which ran up until the mid-'80s. Was very lucky to be able to work with a writer from Stowe named Alan Ferguson, who some of you might have known. He was a cartoonist for Yankee Magazine and wrote some of the strangest plays I've ever read. But they were a lot of fun to do. And Alan has since moved from Stowe and has moved to Vermont, where he is enjoying walking through town, playing his bagpipes. And up there, no one even blinks an eye at him. Oh, look, another strange person. Isn't that nice? I grew up with a family that was very supportive of theater. On your way out to the lobby, if you look on to the right, there's a program from a show that my grandfather directed in 1929 with the Bolton Laymen's League. And he directed a show called Windy Willows, where for $1 you could have the chicken pot dinner and see the show. So we were thinking of bringing back that price, but I'm not. In in 1992, I decided to start Acme Theater Productions. We came up with the name Acme to apply to both the younger crowd, who all knows it from the Wile E. Coyote days, and to the older crowd, who knows it for what the word Acme really means, which is the pinnacle, the summit. We searched for a space to have as a home all over, and I contacted the gentleman who owned the old George Washington Theater downtown, and it was under renovation and had other plans for it. And we've looked in a lot of different places, and we were very lucky about a year and a half, almost 2 years ago, when we spoke with Jerome Nesson about the wonderful plan for this space. And within the years since we started, we have done shows all over Massachusetts and literally all over the country. We compete every year in the New England, let's see, what is it, the Eastern Massachusetts Association of Community Theaters Conference, which is run at Brandeis. And it is part of a national conference setup. And we've been very lucky and had some great success there. We were considered a gypsy group until we got a home here because we did not have a regular home. And so we did shows wherever. We were the first gypsy group to ever win the conference, and we have since won it twice. We have won the regional conference once. We performed at the national conference in Memphis, and we performed once and were invited back to the Nova Scotia International Theater Conference. So we brought a little piece of Maynard with us all the way to Nova Scotia. They kept saying, "You're too nice, you couldn't be American. You must be Canadian, right?" We're American, but we come from Maynard, so it's all right. We are very excited to have the theater here and to be able to be a part of Maynard. It was always our hope to be able to find a space here in town. The town has gone through so many changes and had so many adverse things that have come through, and everyone has said, "Oh, that's the end of the town." And then the next day, everyone is walking down the street smiling and says hello, and it's very pleasant, and the next day everything's fine. People pick up and move on. And it's a wonderfully resilient town, and the people are wonderful and supportive. We are just finishing our second season here. We have had a great time, growing audiences. When you're having your refreshments out in the lobby, we have our schedule for next season set up. We are mid-run of a show right now. We are doing Butterflies Are Free, which was on Broadway in the early 70s. This coming weekend is our closing weekend. For everybody who's here tonight, we have some $1 off coupons if you'd like to come to closing weekend. Phone numbers and everything on there. It is a lot of fun. There's no filth, there's no bad language, there's no anything. It's just a nice family show. There's a couple people in their underwear, but it's 1970s underwear, so it's really not showing anything. But we are very happy to be able to start to become a part of the Maynard history. And I know I've been speaking with different people tonight who have said, well, you know, there were 3 groups and they did this and they did that. I would love to know about the older groups that were here, where they become. We want people from Maynard to get involved. This Acme is Maynard's community theater. It's not ours, it's yours, and we want you to be a part of it. Helping out, coming to see the shows, just coming down and telling us to turn down that god-awful music. Whatever, just come and talk with us. Tell us what's going on. Tonight, for a special treat, the 2 of the ladies from the show that are currently going on are going to do about a 9-minute scene from the show for you. It is a high emotion scene. I'll give you a quick setup for it. The Butterflies Are Free is about a young blind man who has moved to New York to make it on his own for the first time. Again, keep in mind this is the very early 70s, so a lot of the moral dilemmas are different. But the scene is between his mother and the young woman who was a very free-spirited young woman, who he became quite close with next door in a very short period of time. And I will leave that. We will take the house lights down and then show you that. And then after that, I believe Jero has a few things to talk about.
That's great.
Great. So give us just a couple of moments.
There's you today too, but I thought this is really not gonna. Yeah, I called it last night. It's spooky, but in Bridgeton. Oh, do it? Yeah.
Mrs. Benson. Mrs. Benson. Mrs. Benson!
Yes?
Oh, hello, Mrs. Benson. Would you mind coming in here a moment? I would like to talk to you.
Well, I better be leaving soon because I do have this audition to get to. I better leave in about 15 minutes because I get lost around New York all the time.
Oh, don't you worry. I promise I'll get you out in time. Please, come in. I thought you and I could have a little talk together. You know, the girls, alone. Please, sit down. Can I get you something to drink? Some coffee or tea?
No, thanks. What if that apple is still in the fridge?
Oh, I'm sure it is. Oh, yes. Is Don? Oh, he went shopping. You should wash all your fruits and vegetables these days. They spray all those insecticides on everything now. I'm not so sure the insects are less harmful. I like my apples to be nice and shiny.
This reminds me of something. Oh, what is it?
I've no idea.
You handing me an apple nice and shiny. Oh, I know, Snow White.
Oh.
Do you remember the scene where the Wicked Witch gives Snow White the poison apple? Oh, I didn't mean that the way it sounded, Mrs. Baker. I know you're not really a Wicked Witch.
Oh, of course not, dear. And I know you're not Snow White.
Witches may very well be hours before I read the audition. I could very well just perish right before their eyes.
You're going to get that job, you know.
How can you be so sure?
Because you're such a pretty girl. And that's what they want in the theater, isn't it?
Today you have to have just a pretty face. Anyway, I'm not that pretty. I think under certain lights I'm rather lovely. I think I'm a little interesting looking, but no, I'm definitely not pretty.
Oh, nonsense. You're extremely pretty.
No, I'm not.
Oh, yes, you are.
Oh, no, I'm not. I have beady little eyes like a bird and a figure like a fire hydrant. Well, aren't you going to deny that you said that?
Well, how can I, dear? You obviously heard it.
Well, there are plenty of true things you can put me down with, but you don't have to put me down with lies.
Do you know what I like about you?
Mm-hmm. Nothing.
Oh, yes. I like your honesty, your candor. You're really quite a very worldly young woman, aren't you, Mrs. Benson?
I guess I am. But I really wish you wouldn't call me Mrs. Benson.
Well, why not? Isn't that your name, Mrs. Benson?
Well, you say it as though you don't really mean it.
Oh, I'm sorry. Why don't I call you Jill? Yes, that's more friendly. And I'll try to say it as though I mean it. Now, Jill, you were telling me about your childhood.
I was?
Yes, it must have been very interesting having so many fathers.
Well, it was, actually. All of Mother's husbands were very different from each other. So I was exposed to all sorts of ideas about life and world affairs, even religion. My real father, he was Methodist, and the second one was Episcopalian, the third one was Christian Scientist, and the fourth one was Jewish.
Doesn't your mother like Catholics?
Oh, yes, she does, but they're not allowed to marry her for some reason.
I suppose she got an X rating from the church.
It's too bad. She's really very nice.
Oh, I'm sure she is. So then it's your childhood that has made you so worldly and understanding.
Yes, and being so worldly and understanding, Mrs. Baker, I can tell you didn't ask me here to discuss my childhood or to tell me how pretty I am.
Well, I was interested in seeing what you and Donnie might have in common. He likes you very much.
And I like him very much. You know, he may very well be the most beautiful person I've ever met. I mean, imagine going through life, never seeing anything. Not even a painting, or a flower, or even a Christmas card. I mean, I want to die, but Don wants to live. I mean, really live. He can even kid about it. I think he's fantastic.
So then, You would want what's best for him, wouldn't you?
Oh. Now we're getting to it, aren't we? Like maybe he'd be better off living at home with you? Is that it, Mrs. Baker?
Donnie was perfectly happy at home until Linda Fletcher filled him with ideas about a place of his own.
Well, maybe you just want to believe he'd only be happy with you. Well, there are none so blind as those who will not see. There, I can quote Dylan Thomas and little Donnie.
Oh, you constantly astonish me.
Well, we women of the world can do that.
Oh, it's amazing how much like Linda you really are. Very interesting.
Tell me something, why do you always refer to him as Donnie?
Because it's his name. Why? Don't I say it as though I mean it?
He hates being called Donnie.
He's never mentioned it.
Sure he has. You've just never listened. Well, there are none so deaf as those who will not hear. Hey, you can make up a lot of those. There are none so lame as those who will not walk. There are none so thin as those who will not eat.
Do you think it's a good idea that Donnie lives here alone?
I think it's a good idea for Don to live wherever he wants to. Anyway, he's not alone. I'm here.
Oh, really? For how long? Do you have a lease on that apartment?
No,
So you could move out tomorrow if you felt like it.
that's right.
You couldn't sustain a marriage for more than 6 days, could you?
My marriage doesn't concern you.
Oh, it didn't seem to concern you much either, did it?
Yes, it did.
Do you have any idea what marriage to a blind boy might be like? Not even your mother has covered that territory.
Suppose we leave my mother out of this, huh?
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize you were so touchy about
I'm
her.
not touchy about her. I just don't want to talk about her.
Fine. Then we'll talk about you. You've seen Donnie at his best here in this room, which he's memorized. And he's memorized how many steps to the drugstore and to the delicatessen. But take him out of this room or off this street and he is lost. He panics. Donnie needs someone who will stay with him, and not just for 6 days.
Well, you don't have to worry, Mrs. Baker. Nothing serious will develop between Donnie and me. I mean, I'm not built that way.
But Donnie is built that way.
Please, we are just having kicks.
Oh, kicks! That's how it started with Linda, just kicks. But Donnie fell in love with her, and he'll fall in love with you too. And then what happens?
I don't know.
Well, then don't let it go that far. Stop now before you hurt him.
Well, what about you? Aren't you hurting him?
Oh, I can't hurt him. I can only irritate him. You can hurt him. The longer you stay, the harder it will be after you leave. Let him come home with me, and you go and have your kicks with someone who won't feel them after you leave.
Well, I'm not so sure you can't hurt him. Maybe more than anybody. I think you deserve all the credit in the world for bringing up a pretty marvelous guy. But bringing up a son, even a blind one, isn't a lifetime occupation. Now, the more you help him, the more you hurt him. It was Linda Fletcher, not you, that gave him the one thing he needed most, confidence in himself. And God, you're always dwelling on the negative. Now, always what he needs, never what he wants. Always what he can't do, never what he can. What about his music? Have you ever heard the song he wrote? I bet you didn't even know he could write music. I mean, you're probably right about me. I'm not the most ideal girl for Don, but I do know this. Neither are you. And if I'm going to tell anybody to go home, it's going to be you, Mrs. Baker. You go home.
And that was a scene from Butterflies Are Free. Sorry, we're doing double duty. Running lights coming up here. Ha! So that is just a small sampling of what we do. Next season, we're going to be doing 3 full shows leading off with a very fun comedy called The Nerd. We will then be moving on to a wonderful musical called Hey, My Name is Alice. After that, we have planned for the month of January an original playwrights festival, which will be the second time we've done that. We did it this year with original plays written by local artists, with local actors doing them. We did 20 short plays in 3 nights. It was very well attended. In February, we'll be doing a celebration of love. Some of you may have attended in December of this year, or this past year, our celebration of the season, which we did music and readings having to do with the holidays. In February, we'll be doing a celebration of love about the highs and lows of love and romance. And we'll be ending our season in April with the wonderful drama True West, written by Sam Shepard. So the flyers are out in the lobby. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask us. The lobby is filled with photos from past shows, so take your time, look around. And Susan, should I just go ahead with Jerome?
Yes, please.
Jerome Nesson, who is the director of ArtSpace Maynard, is going to come and do a little soft shoe, a couple of little side tap dances, and entertain you further.
This is about as close to a stage as I'm going to get. Thank you all for coming tonight. I'm sure the Maynard Historical Society would be really interested in learning that David Shepard and some volunteers went through great effort, both historically and architecturally, to represent my first apartment in 1968. It's historically accurate. Well, it's a little after 8, and what I had planned to do was to have a tour, have a mini open studios. We have 70 artists here, and about more than a third of them are actually Maynard residents. And I've asked 8 of the artists to open their studios, so you get a chance to meet the artists and see their studio. And for those of you who remember it as a school, you'll see how these classrooms and other rooms have been converted into fantastic artist studios. So what I think I'll do, Susan, is maybe after refreshments, people are going to be there from 8 o'clock to like 8:45 or so I don't want to spend too much time chatting. So what I thought we could do is, once you're set, we could all go up to the gallery, which used to be the school library. I could give you a little orientation, a little history. We're only talking about 15 months of history. And then we could go visit some artist studios. Does that make sense?
Very good.
Okay.
So that means that we'll take a break now for about, what, 15 minutes? Would that be about right? And they tell us that you can take the refreshments, you can come back in here and sit if you'd like. They allow you to bring tea break. They encourage you. Yeah. All right, let's take a 10 minutes. And see what
Well, you know,
Hi, Daniel. How are you?
No, if you went to school here, this was the old school library, and that's an artifact that we left. It's his biography up there.
To this group, it was the auditorium.
That's right.
Oh,
They put in
this
this ceiling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what we did, it was kind of a dark, dingy place, and we put up these new walls and carpeting and the lighting. And it's really a wonderful gallery. And every 6 weeks or so, we have different artists present their work. And this work was just hung yesterday. It's 3 artists. One of the artists, until about a month ago, lived in Maynard. She's now moved to Acton, Dorothea Cross. And Dorothea is the artist that did the chairs against the wall there. Really wonderful work. And Charlie Goodwin did these large paintings on this back wall, including something that looks like it could have been the mill here. This fellow lives in New Hampshire, so I think it may be the Ameskeet Mill, but I haven't seen a title for that yet. They haven't put up the the title sheets. And this kind of three-dimensional work is Karen Jacobs. And she calls them constructs. They're a combination of paintings and sculpture. And no, those really aren't chocolates, so don't try. And the gallery is open to the public Wednesday through Saturday from noon to 5, and come on by. This Saturday from 3 to 6 or 4 to 6? From 4 to 6, there's an opening reception. The artists will be here and have food and wine, and feel free to come by and meet the artists and have a little wine and cheese and look around.
And how does one get into this from outside? Up the big stairs?
There, or there's handicap parking and an elevator in the back. You just ring the bell. And basically, what we've done is converted existing classrooms and other facilities into artist studios. Downstairs, we did a lot of construction. We converted what had been the old art room into 2 artist studios and a printmaking studio. We converted the band room and the cafeteria into artist studios, and the kitchen, which is open for you to look at, is now a paper making studio. There's an artist that is a very well-known handmade paper person, and the old stainless steel sinks and drains work perfectly for her. So what we're going to do is all of the studios that are open tonight are in that building, the far building, on all 3 floors. So I think there are 2 artists on the 2nd floor, 5 on this floor, and the paper maker down below in the old kitchen. So why don't you spend the next half an hour, 45 minutes just kind of wandering around that building and meet the artist. And then in October, in conjunction with Maynard Fest, we'll have our formal open studios when all 70 of the artists will be here and open their studios to the public. So feel free to...
And how will they get out when they're done tonight?
Well, you can either go out this door,
okay,
or the back door, any of the...
They're all open? Is that what you're saying?
All the doors can be open from the inside.
Okay, all right.
Very good.
Okay. So
If you have any questions, feel free to ask the artist or myself.